I have recently been wearing late medieval, early Renaissance clothing to historic cities and sites, as many of you know. And also, many of you, dear viewers, have inquired as to the reactions I've experienced from people. So let's talk about the fascinating panoply of interactions I've been enjoying. So first off, lots of questions as to why I was dressed the way I was. Was there a medieval festival somewhere? Was there some other thing happening that would lead me to do so? Had I been hired by the respective historic site to provide historic ambiance and verisimilitude? And God, I wish. That would be great if I could actually just get paid to dress this way and be ambient, be the Contessa for people. Some people assumed I was a staff member of the respective sites, so they would often ask me for directions to specific locations and exhibits. In the Boboli Gardens in particular, they would ask me, to which I never knew the answer because it was my first time there, actually. But as I would walk past people, I would often hear in Italian, "Oh, quick, ask the lady in the costume where it is." Immediately, I knew they were talking about me. Let's see. Others inquired whether I was wearing fashions, or the fashions typical of that city, by which I actually think they meant modern folk fashion. So some people didn't have a concept of what I was wearing as historic. Meanwhile, other people specifically asked if I was wearing the historical fashions typical of the location. So that kind of varied the level of general passive fashion history knowledge. Several people inquired whether I dressed that way every day as a matter of course, you know, yards and yards and yards of silk and cloth of gold, and if I just went about my normal day that way. But to be fair, if I had a household staff and servants to handle the menial tasks, I might well be tempted to dress in such lovely layers more regularly, especially if I had a lady's maid, a lady in waiting to actually help me dress, because let me tell you, these sleeves, they suck to do on their own, as I learned, unfortunately, by being out here on my own. Countless people asked me to take my photo and to have their photo taken with me. I mean, that's kind of obvious, but many people would try to covertly take a photo, but they were never as subtle as they thought they were, because I can see what they're doing. So I would then offer to let them have one of me holding still, and they had the good grace to look, you know, somewhat abashed. Surprisingly, one person interested in and knowledgeable of historic fashion specifically asked to take up-close pictures to share with a friend who was looking to make a similar ensemble. This lady was very impressed with my veil. She's a Finnish physicist of all things. She was impressed with my veil, the embroidery on my sleeves, and then especially the pianella ones I showed her. So that was an unexpected encounter. The staff of Blend, the restaurant at which I like to eat lunch in Lucca, were absolutely delighted to have me and even gave me a discount on lunch in exchange for taking some photos and posting them on their Facebook page. And in fact, they didn't even tell me they were giving me the discount. They just gave it to me. I got a 26 euro lunch for 15 euros, so yay. Most interestingly though, the clerk of the expensive Sienese food products shop in Siena, recognized that I was wearing Fiorentino fashions from the early Renaissance and advised me against wearing such to Siena, especially during Palio season. She told me I should wear medieval when visiting Siena because, you know, that's when Siena's heyday was. For those who don't know, in the 15th century, Siena basically lost the war against Florence, literally, and Firenze conquered it, and it's an insult they have never apparently forgotten. European memories are so long. Anyway, I was impressed by her awareness of the date and geography of my ensemble, so wow, yeah. Some gentlemen charmingly would pretend that I was a Renaissance statue and feign surprise when I moved, for instance, saying things such as, "Oh my, such a beauty, I thought you were a statue of a Medici princess, but now I see that you are living flesh." You know, very, very poetic. The Maghreb and Sub-Saharan African immigrants I passed have always been super appreciative of my historic clothing, and they find it extremely beguiling and attractive, but always in a very respectful way. Lots of eloquent compliments in several languages, never a crude attempt to put the moves on, as it were. So this last one really took me by surprise. The Italian youth also seemed to appreciate the Contessa. At the Uffizi, for instance, teenagers of both sexes would inquire about my ensemble and then express approbation, or of all sexes. I didn't look close enough to make a call as to how many genders were inquiring, but they all express approbation, which is a shocking contrast to the trauma of my youth, where I was mocked roundly for my esoteric and eccentric tastes in historic fashion and wearing it. So that was certainly a nice change of pace too. I have to say, to this day, if I pass teenagers and they're giggling, I assume they're mocking me. So teenage trauma for the win. Little girls and boys seem particularly beguiled by the Contessa's weeds and often exclaim, for instance, oh, a contessa, or excuse me, not a contessa, oh, a princess, una principessa. But most refreshingly, I would say, no one inquired as to whether I was performing in a theatrical piece, i.e. the unoriginal and oh so overwrought, are you in a play? Not a single person insulted me that way. So in sum, I would say that the experience of wearing geographical and historically appropriate fashions to these various historical sites has just been thrilling and enjoyable. And not only for me and for my experience of those historic sites, because it really does feel like I'm getting closer to the place, like I'm almost touching the echo of the past by being in these places where 15th century people worked and lived and existed and created. In some cases we're talking about painters and sculptors were in these places, in these cathedrals and these great halls. So there's that joy, but there's also a certain pleasure, a real pleasure in bringing joy to others, because I can see the expression on people's faces. They all, as I walk by, there's nearly always gasps. And God, if I pass a tour group, Mamma Mia! It's this chorus of excitement and jubilation, practically. And that not only does that make me feel proud of the level of mastery that I've achieved in my historical fashion, but it also it pleases me that I'm pleasing other people and brightening their day and maybe bringing some beauty and inspiration to them where they didn't necessarily think they were going to have any. And also, I get the impression that my presence in these historic sites enhances and augments the experience for them as well. It brings it more to life to have a living human dressed appropriately, using the appropriate manners, because I'm very careful about trying to copy the hand gestures that I see in all of the portraiture from this era, the frescoes and whatnot, so that I'm not just putting on clothes, I'm putting on the whole person. And I think that really enhances the experience for others, and it allows them to develop maybe a love of history that they wouldn't have had, or a connection to that history. It enlivens it, it makes it warm, it makes it vibrant, it makes it real. And so I do receive an extreme pleasure from that. It's heady, it really is. So I shall continue wearing geographically and historically appropriate clothing for these very sites, and I shall continue to report on my experiences. So thank you all for asking, and until next time, stay creative.